Hello, my name is Spencer and welcome back to my hobby channel. I usually make miniature dioramas, but this video will be a tad different. This is a TIE fighter from the miniature tabletop board game Star Wars Armada. Armada is a hyperfixation of mine and I wanted to try painting a few of my fighters. And by a few, I mean very many. To start, I trimmed the base of each TIE down, as I have had difficulties putting them onto their plastic bases in the past. For each TIE, before painting them, I dry fit them onto the plastic bases to make sure I won't run into any future problems. In total, I have about 30 TIEs, so I'll be taking an assembly mode method to this project. Once the trimming is done, I put some double-sided tape onto a clipboard I use for priming. Then I put all the TIEs on upside down. Once ready, I primed using a Vallejo Wolf Grey spray can. Once the primer had dried, I then repeated the process with all of the TIEs in the correct orientation. I chose this specific primer because it was the closest I could get to the accurate movie colors, and I could get a matching pigment in a bottle to clean up my errors later. I used this broken plastic base to paint all of my TIEs. This was also the reason that I clipped them all before. For painting the TIEs, the technique is pretty straightforward. As carefully as possible, I put a matte black in between each of the struts. Even if I ended up messing it up, I can clean it up a bit later with the matching pigment tape. In the areas that didn't get quite covered enough, I can just add another layer of the matte black after the first layer had dried. For the inside of the wings, it is a bit more technically difficult. There are no struts, so I had to freehand the insides. It is important to remember that these fighters don't necessarily need to be perfect, as they will be a decent distance away when you play with them. For some of the wings where I really messed up, I painted the entire inside black and tried to freehand some of the small lines, but that proved to be less successful than my original plan. Once the wings were at a place I was satisfied with, I then took the edge of my brush and cleaned up the edges of each of the sides of the wings. I tried to be as careful as possible to not spill onto the black. This project really reminded me that mini making should always be about fun, and that I should always never try to stress myself out too much about reaching perfection. There's always something new to learn or try, and I still have a lot to learn. Again, painting the insides of the wings was met with less than success. I ended up having to repaint them black anyway. I then took a colder stone gray and painted the front of the cockpits. This just brought some necessary visual variety to the middle of the model. I then took a blue-black wash and covered the entirety of the fuselage of the TIEs to bring it more to the movie standard colors. Once everyone had been painted, I put the fighters on the clipboard one last time. I did this to take them outside for a matte varnish, which will protect the paint jobs. I ended up using the Army Painter matte varnish for this step. I got it for a deal at my local game store. Once the varnish had set, I can knock them loose and prep for the final step. Finally, I put all the fighters onto their clean plastic bases for future use in epic tabletop space battles. Star Wars Armada is my favorite and only type of game like this I play regularly. I got into it a couple years ago and have amassed quite the collection. Armada unfortunately has been recently discontinued by its manufacturer, and I have a backlog of projects to work on now, so expect to see them in the near future. Once all the fighters are ready, I can move them and get to some glamour shots. I'd like to say thank you to each of you who stayed through till the end of this video. I genuinely appreciate the support of my hobby. This project is a little bit different than what I have put out in the past, but the silly little tabletop game is something that I really enjoy. I have plenty more models to make, stories to tell, and a wide variety of hobby things that you will see, and they will make their way into future videos. I hope you all have an excellent week, and I'll see you around.